Hi everyone and welcome back to Eleanor's Restoration, now on video 7. I'd like to thank everyone who's been watching the videos and leaving comments. It's always nice to have feedback. What you're looking at here, I would love to say, is Eleanor fully restored. However, it is a scale model of what model she actually is. I think I've said before, she's the Flame Red Limited Edition 1990 model. This was given to me as a gift, and it gives me an idea of what she was like when she came out the factory all those years ago. She is going to be taken back as closely as she can to original when I finish her. I will have to make a decision closer at the time regarding the stripes and the black trim around the number plate and the black grille there. I always think chrome looks nicer on a car, but that's the decision closer to the time. So an update from my last video. It's been about 5 months, and as you can see I've still got a little work to do on the floor. The plug welds need finished off, and then I need to seam weld along and prepare all of the rest of the floor. And then we'll move on to the rear quarter panel, and then the wheel arches. I've been unable to do any work on them due to an injury, and I'm still not in a position to do any work on her just now. I do miss working on her and I do miss doing the videos, but as soon as I can I will get some videos back on the progress. As you can see from the state of the engine, I've not made any efforts to clean it at all. It would be nice to get into the engine. I'm actually really looking forward to taking that apart and rebuilding it, but I thought that if I had a rebuilt engine without a car to put in it, it wouldn't be very good. So I thought if I can do the bodywork on the car, then that leaves a nice engine to go back in it. It's like the cherry on top of the cake, so I'll focus on the bodywork and then come back to the engine. What I thought I would do is, because I can't work on Eleanor at the moment, I thought I might share some of the procedures I've carried out in the past. As I've said before, I keep a rolling log of the restoration that I've had since day one. These are my logbooks here. They basically log how long I'm spending on the project, what I'm actually doing. I label everything, I take into account how much I've spent. I've got hundreds of photos just like this one on the computer. As you can see from there, if you've seen the previous videos, that's what the doorstep used to look like. It'll be good to see once it's actually finished. What I thought I might be able to share with you is the engine removal procedure I've got here. I thought I would do it like this after it's been out, just to give a different perspective of where everything is on the engine. As we can see, the engine bay here, there's two ways you can take the engine out. One, like I've done it, by removing all the auxiliaries and taking it out with an engine hoist, or it can be detached from the car and left onto the subframe and removed from underneath in the car, lifted off it. The reason I went with this way was that it keeps the front end intact with the subframe, and I'm wanting into all these areas as well so that I can get a proper restoration done. The engine stored on here, I thought it would be quite good just to go around and see bits you would normally not see as you're doing the progress, just for a different perspective. Right, so on to the engine removal procedure. I tried to stick as closely as I can to the Haynes and the Haynes Restoration Manual. It's quite a good guide, although everyone will have their own preferences on what method they use and how they do it. Step 1 was removing the bonnet, which is really straightforward. You have two hinges, one on each side, one there and one in there. They're attached by a nut here and a nut here. The bolts are captive bolts. When I took them off, they just sheared off the nuts, which isn't a problem because I'm putting new hinges on anyway. But it made it easy to get into the engine bay, just getting the bonnet out of the way to start with. So step 1, the bonnet removal. Step 2, disconnect the battery, located in the boot, as you can see in front of you there. Start by disconnecting the earth wire or the black wire, which is the closest to us in front. Then disconnect the live wire to the rear, make sure that they kept well away from each other. If you can also see there, there is a strap that holds it in place. That's just by 2 bolts, that undoes, and just simply lift the battery free. If it's going to be kept in storage, just remember to keep it in a dry place. It's not too hot, not too warm, and if it's going to be there a while, it'll probably need a recharge before it goes back in the car. Step 3 is the coolant drain. So this is the radiator here. It's in pretty nasty condition, as you can see. I will be replacing the radiator. I'll still be using the guard. That'll be wire brushed, cleaned, resprayed, and it'll be good as new. It's not in bad condition actually. To drain the coolant from the radiator, there's a clip on the lower hose, as you can see down here. There was no way that was coming off at the time, and I'm going to be replacing all the hose rubbers anyway, so I decided just to cut the hose. And as you can see from inside, it's dried off now, but it was pretty nasty liquid that was in there, so the whole system would have needed flushed anyway. So that's the radiator there. When it's actually in the car, it will sit attached to the engine on that side there, if you can see. So as you can see, the bottom hose down at the corner is not the most accessible, which is why it was a lot easier cutting the hose when I knew it was getting replaced anyway. But if you're not replacing the hoses, just be careful. It'll probably be easier to access it from underneath. And don't let it come in contact with your skin, it's quite toxic stuff, the antifreeze. Step 4, drain the oil. It's easier to drain oil when it's a bit warm because it's not as thick. I was unable to do that because obviously the engine and the battery and everything were out, so if you have the engine running and you drain it when it is warm, just always be careful that it'll be hot and avoid the hazards of burning yourself. But to drain the oil, sump plug in the Mini, the sump plug shared with the engine and the gearbox, just the way it was designed. The drain plug for this, I can take you around, is down there. That's just it there. So if you can just remove that, might be quite tight depending on when it was last changed. This wasn't too bad there. Make sure you've got a tub underneath to catch the old oil. It'll drain out, just let it drain completely. Then once that's finished, remove the oil filter. The oil filter's not on here, but this is the top of the oil filter housing here. I can take you underneath. You can see where it screws on there. It's just your standard oil filter that unscrews. It's quite tight to get off this, and as you can imagine, when that's in the front of the engine, you've got the alternator on top here obscuring it, so it can be quite tricky to get into. But take that off completely. You will get some oil spillage out here, so make sure you've got something to catch it in there, and then once it's completely dried out, you can clean round about it. Step 5 is to remove the front grille. Eleanor never had a front grille, but we go in there and it's a case of just finding the screws from behind and just undoing the screws, and then it just lifts away. The later model in Mini, which this is, also had a protective layer that went over the top. It was just a plastic guard that went over. Didn't like the look of it. It covered the engine. I like to see the engine. That can also be taken off as well. That simply attaches by a couple of screws, but like I say, I never had this on Eleanor, so it didn't apply. And obviously to the earlier models, this was never added. It was added as a later addition to protect the electrics of the alternator and the starter motor to stop the mud coming in, so that was the reasoning behind it. Step 6, remove the alternator. It's held in by bolts to the brackets here and here. The tensioning bolt goes on here, that allows you to tension it up later on to the belt. So if we lift it up, it's quite heavy, a lot of weight in it. It's held in this orientation here. You can see the pulley here, driven by this belt that's on the crankshaft pulley and the radiator fan. So removing this is fairly straightforward. Just remember that if the battery is connected, disconnect the negative terminal on the battery before you do this. But because we've already taken the battery out, that'll not apply. So the wiring loom goes into this plug here at the back. Pull that out. It might be a bit sticky, so what I did was wiggle it from side to side as I'm pulling. That pulls that out. Once I've done that, I labelled it, just put in alternator, so that when it gets muddled in with the other wires, it can be easily determined where it goes back to the alternator when it goes back together. I then loosened the bolt around the back here. That's the pulley that adjusts it on here. That loosens that, so I undone that completely. Then I loosened the two top bolts there and there. Again, that's up in the bracketries here and here. Once they're removed, it simply lifts free. And if you're going to reuse this, again, just make sure you store it somewhere safe. When I replace it, I'm going to get a new one, just purely because I'm going for as many new components as I can. But I'll keep this as a spare should I need it. There's always use for something, I'm not one for binning things. Step 7, disconnect the ignition coil. We can see there the coil is connected by a bracket, that being the bracket there, onto the engine. Then connected at the other end by various electrical connections. If I could take you to the engine just to show you the bracket there. That's where it's held on there. So the bracket comes out here, attaches to the coil, just so it can be tightened on that. The wiring on it from the positive terminal, just make sure again that you're wiring everything up as you go, but the positive terminal goes to the ignition. It has a wire to the starter, and there's also a static suppressor on there. The negative terminal goes to the distributor and also to the earth. So if you mark them up, you know when they're going back on. Then once all that's done, it just simply lifts off and it can be stored away safely. I got in the habit, if you can see from here, once I take the bolts off, just screwing them back on and leaving them there. That way you know where they are when you come back to them. It's just a handy tip. Step 8, the distributor cap and HT leads. The distributor cap, I've left the distributor on here. You could obviously take that away. I will take that out and replace it. I'm looking to get an electronic one to replace the old point system here. It was never a very efficient method, and then that had to be replaced every 6 months or so. But the distributor cap's held on here by two clips, one on each side, that pulls out by hand, lift off, and it's now in storage. HT leads, very straightforward. They pop over each one of the spark plugs, pull them off. What I've done is taken them still attached to the distributor cap, so you know the order they're in. Any Haynes manual or anyone that works in minis will know which order the firing order goes in once you put them back on. But because I do anyway, I've ordered them and numbered them to say which one they go on, so 1, 2, 3, 4. But again, I probably will be replacing those with new ones when the build comes towards its end. So fairly straightforward, the distributor. Step 9 is the starter motor, which we can see on the ground here. Just take you around about it. Attached by two bolts onto the engine case and the gearbox casing in there. I can just show you it. Attaches obviously, and it's driven by the flywheel inside there. So electrical connections all onto the end here. Before taking them off, I keep repeating myself, but take a note of what's on there. I took photos, as you can see on this photo here, to see what goes everywhere. Any wires that needed replaced, I did need replaced before I done anything, and then again that's the wire in there. Just as wee diagram as well, letting you know where they come, anything that'll help you along the way. So once you've disconnected them, having labelled them, the only other thing to undo is these two bolts here, and it kind of wiggles loose. It can be locked in slightly, but it just pulls out like there, and this is something I will definitely be replacing. Just looking at the state of it, you can also see on the parts here, it's very old. Try to find a date on there. Yep, oath. Well, I've covered all the electrical side of the engine removal, so I think it's probably a good time to stop there. I'll go with the rest of the procedures I've done in the next video. If you like what I'm doing, just put a like up. If you've got any questions or comments, I'm always happy to hear them. I'm just trying to enjoy myself with what I can at the moment, and I'm always enjoying myself when I'm working on Eleanor. So until the next video, have a nice Christmas, and I'll see you then.